And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. Good to see you doing so great. The Bruins, though, of late, have not been great. Yeah, I just put some rhymes together. That was kind of gross.
Spitting.
I'm spitting over here on this when we're recording on a Monday morning. But the Bruins have not been so great of late. We knew this was going to be a tough road trip. And, drop a close one to Tampa Bay. We talked about that on Poke the Bear. Then lost a heartbreaker to Florida. Ooh, tough. 1.4 seconds left. And then that overtime goal, just not great. And the Carolina game was really not great. And understandably, it's the first time this has happened all year. And people are kind of, should they be worried? Should Bruins fans be worried? Should the Bruins be worried? And I don't know. I don't really think so, personally. There's one part of the whole trip I would be worried about, which we'll get to in a bit. But as a whole, I think there are two sides to this. But my view of it is you lost a good game to Tampa. You just kind of had a malfunction at the end against Florida. And Carolina's a really freaking good team, and that's going to happen sometimes. And they just happen to be 3 in a row. What do you think?
Evan, I think when you look at it, I don't want to say that Connor Bedard's still in play, but
this team is doomed.
No. Yes, no. They're going to be fine. Again,
Pastrnak must be dealt at this trade deadline.
Yeah. The fact that the Bruins' first consecutive losing streak came all the way in the final week of January, I think should reflect well on where this team is at. Every team goes through these lulls. Every team hits these rough patches. And again, you can look at the schedule and just, a road game against a Tampa team that's still very good, that I think has now won, 11 straight games at home. A win, a loss to a Panthers team. Again, crushing fashion. You need that. You need a win like that. You need to seal things off in the final seconds of the game. But still, that's a hungry team trying to fight for playoff positioning. And then Carolina, this is a team and a venue that has been a nightmare for the Bruins for over a year now, right? The Bruins played there 5 times last season, counting the playoffs. We're outscored 21-6.
Yeah, remember Carolina and even in the Garden, remember last year Carolina gave them that loss
7-1.
7-1. Oh.
Yeah, so again, you look at how good this team, the Bruins, have been this year, and you almost feel like it's inevitable that they break through in these third periods and come back and win these games. And the one against Florida really does hurt in terms of just you had 2 points right there up for grabs. But again, I wouldn't put too much stock into it. Again, we'll discuss more about, especially I think Carolina and some of these things in terms of looking ahead to, I think, the gauntlet that awaits once we get to the postseason. But when I think you look at the Bruins, you can look at things like general fatigue. 3 games in 4 nights. Power plays hit a bit of a rut. And you also have to look at injuries, right? As much as you have the stalwarts like Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci and Pastrnak and these guys in the lineup, these are the games where you do miss someone like a Jake DeBrusk, where whether it's Tampa Bay kind of shutting off the grade A ice or, a team like Carolina, who's really good at pressuring puck carriers, stacking the blue line. Having a guy with that, 0 to 60 speed like DeBrusk comes in handy in terms of fighting into that grade A ice, and didn't have much going in these last couple of games, especially even you look at the power play, which I think has been completely out of whack over the last couple of games. Having, DeBrusk down there at the net front, does what he does, stays at the net front, tips pucks, all those things, missing him as well. So again, it's a rut. Not playing very well, looked discombobulated. Probably could use a nice 9-day break, even though they still have one more game up against Toronto. But I'm not hitting the button to go to DEFCON 1 right now, Evan.
No, I was going to say that the All-Star break comes at a perfect time. You need it. As you see, the rest of the fatigue is pretty evident. Game in Toronto Wednesday, it would be nice if for the Bruins to maybe get a win out of that one and go into the All-Star break on a high, because I think if you lose that game, suddenly everyone's saying, oh, this All-Star break, they're coming in not so hot. But again, it comes at the right time, and that you need some of that time to sort of recover, rest a bit. So I think it's like for an NHL season with the All-Star game in the middle, I almost feel like it's better for players to not make the All-Star game, because it's you want the honors, but at the same time, like you also kind of want to go on vacation for a bit. lay low, relax. It's almost better that they're not entering, I don't know. I don't mean to be like Mr. Positivity here, but if they were entering the All-Star break on like a tear and they had yet to lose their 2 in a row or consecutive games, would be like, oh, the All-Star game's coming at a terrible time. They're on a heater and this is getting interrupted. And then they're coming back kind of off that lull. So at least they get a little bit of the break. But you wrote about the Hurricanes for Boston.com. And I found this interesting because the Hurricanes, I think, should scare you a bit. And we've said this, I think, from the beginning of the year, that if there's any team in the East, Tampa's given you trouble in the past. At some point, Toronto has to break through. But Carolina is a really interesting one. Again, fortunately, you won't have to meet them until Eastern Conference Final. But they do stand in the way of the Stanley Cup potentially if they make it through the Metro, which, I mean, that team should make it through the Metro without huge issue. They have all the pieces. I mean, you're missing Pacioretty, which we'll get to in a bit. I want to get to what they could do with the deadline later. We're going to turn into Hurricanes beat for a little bit here. But at the same time, they have the pieces, and they've been kicking around for a little while here. Like, I think stylistically they can beat you, but also like it's getting to be kind of their time too, in a sense, right?
Yeah, this isn't like the team in 2019 where they went on that crazy run and they get to the Eastern Conference Final and were kind of wide-eyed and didn't have a chance against the Bruins in that series. Played a little bit tougher in the Toronto bubble the next year, but I think over the last couple of years, you've seen this be a team that I think buys into what Rob Brind'Amour is doing. The system works when you look at when they're executing. I mean, that forecheck is relentless. How they attack on the PK, all that stuff gives even a very structured team like the Bruins fits when they're playing at their best. So yeah, this is a team that isn't an upstart team that is looking to finally break through. They're there, and they've been there for a while, and they're due for a deep run themselves. So this isn't a team that I think, especially you look at the Bruins and the record-setting pace they're on, there's probably one team that is not afraid of them, that doesn't have something in the back of their head. It's probably this Carolina team because they smoked them last year. Like, this is, again, the Bruins are a better team than they were last year, have pieces back that help. You could make the argument if David Krejci's back, they probably beat Carolina in a 7-game series, but they'd been there, done that. I kind of wrote in my column for Boston.com, this Carolina team was the team that got the closest to pushing the Bruins to post-Bergeron era. Came very, very close to it. Given the chance, they are more than happy and capable of finishing the job again this year if you're not up to the task. So, I just think the way they play, I think Ty Anderson had a thing that he tweeted out that Frederik Andersen, as much as he was they don't have much luck against the Bruins with Toronto. Before that third period goal, I think they credited to Taylor Hall. Frederik Andersen had a 153-minute shutout streak against the Bruins. Like, everywhere in the ice, they have depth. Guys that match up well against Boston. They're going to, I think, be the biggest hurdle. You can look at Toronto, and they've got the talent that seems like a team that's due to finally break through and go and run as well. But I think when you look at just the pure matchup, the history, where that team is at in terms of that core, that's a team that, if you're looking at what team has the best chances of upsetting this kind of destiny-driven season the Bruins have been on so far, I think it has to be Carolina.
Yeah, Connor, we can talk about deadline acquisitions and stuff, but if the Bruins really want to beat Carolina, right? If they find themselves in a 7-game series, there's really only one way to beat them, and that is to start eating some more Hello Fresh. Eating well is on the top of the mind this month, and it's comforting to know you always get top quality with Hello Fresh. Ingredients travel from the farm to you in less than 7 days, so you know they're fresh. And Connor, this weekend, it's going to be freezing cold around New England. I believe the high on Saturday is like 14 degrees. Skip the cold, the snowy schlep to the grocery store and stock up on snacks, sides, desserts, and more at HelloFresh Market. Simply add these staples and sweets to your weekly order, and they'll arrive at your doorstep along with your meals. I've been doing this. It's been amazing. Get to be at home. Again, Chef Evan chefs it up. It's terrific. I've talked about the tacos and the meatloaf. The stuff has been really, really good lately, and I keep ordering it because I keep enjoying it. I do need to try some more of the recipes though, because I need to branch out aside from the stuff that I do
Expand your
really
horizons.
enjoy. Yes, my problem is I eat things until I don't like them anymore because I just love them so much, and I don't think I'll stop liking these if I'm being quite honest. So if you want to join this, go to HelloFresh.com/Bruins21 and use code Bruins21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. Again, HelloFresh.com/Bruins21 and use code Bruins21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. You know, even with the All-Star break coming up and the games rolling on after, nothing better than when it's a cold night, the food's all there, takes you like 15, 20 minutes to cook, and you watch the game and eat your food that you've made. It's
perfect.
It's perfect. It's amazing. Mwah, it's amazing. Go there now and do that. So stylistically, you know, it's funny. We talked about the Kraken earlier in the season, how the Kraken kind of deployed a strategy that really worked against the Bruins. The Hurricanes have been doing this for a little while now, and they've evolved and adapted to Jim Montgomery's Bruins. And you saw that on Sunday. And again, Bruins end of, 3 games in 4 nights. It was not, the Bruins were not in peak condition to play a team like the Hurricanes. But at the same time, I think this continues to harp on the people who are like, oh, the Bruins need a losing streak, this and that. You don't, because you want to secure home ice if you face a team like Carolina. Now, do I think if the teams played a 7-game series again, do I think that, they're splitting, they're going 3 wins on the road, 3 wins at home, 3 losses on the road, and then, whoever was at home wins game 7. I don't think it's going to split that evenly, but I think you want home ice in a series against Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the raw numbers again. 21-6 you're outscored last year. It just doesn't seem like it's a situation where for the Bruins, you're all about making this road easier for yourself, right? You look at Carolina and how much of a looming challenge that will be. But again, they should hopefully be in the 3rd round. If everything goes right in terms of where the Bruins and Carolina are both looking at the top of their respective divisions, kick that can down the road. And if you want to make things easier, make sure it's a game 7 in Boston, right? You can look at home ice and people get to the point where they talk about how it's not important. Sometimes look at the history. Look at what the Carolina Hurricanes have done to Boston in their own building. Sure, you can look at game 7 of the 2019 Stanley Cup final. Sure. Well, yes, that's hockey, right? Sometimes shit happens. But let's look at the track record in terms of the Bruins and how much they've struggled against Carolina. For them, it's all about, again, charting that best path. And when you look at the way these standings are settling out, get through the first round, make sure Toronto and Tampa Bay kick the crap out of each other in the first round, make sure you have a home ice against Carolina. I think those are the biggest keys, right? And it all falls into place if you keep on to that number 1 seed. So, again, are we panicking about a 3-game lull? I'm not, but still, you have to still look at keeping pace. It's not like, yes, we've talked about the record-setting kind of run the Bruins are on, but Carolina's not exactly that far behind them. Again, the Bruins have breathing room, but you don't want to be in a stretch where you go 2-7-1 or something like that, and all of a sudden Carolina makes it 5 points or 4 points or anything like that. Just keep on cruising right along, and we'll see how this kind of schedule lightens up a little bit. This is a pretty brutal stretch going into the All-Star break, so I think R&R would be really helpful for this team in terms of kind of resetting their batteries and getting ready for kind of the, not second half, but the final 2 months of the regular season.
Or you somehow hope that Carolina somehow loses in round 1 or 2, which again, I think that's a tall ask. But, Tampa losing to Columbus in 2019 was a tall ask. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I mean, do I see New Jersey beating Carolina? No. I guess if Shesterkin heats up, maybe the Rangers have a chance. Like, I'm just looking, does Washington beat Carolina? No. Pittsburgh? Probably not. I mean, I don't think there's a team over there that is, fully equipped to do that. And it's funny because, the year that the Bruins kind of a last dance type year, it almost feels like the real Stanley Cup is getting through rounds 1 through 3 over, whoever comes out of the West. I think we both agree that it feels like it's a year where the West, you're going to have a team that's like a 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed. It's going to make a crazy run and, take down, a number 1 Winnipeg or something. But it's hockey. Who knows? Speaking of the West, the Bo Horvat rumors continue. People wonder where he's going to end up. every brother, every person. I almost said everybody and their mother, but everybody and their brother too.
Everybody's asking.
Everybody's asking where he's going to end up. And Carolina seems like a pretty good destination because Carolina just had Max Pacioretty go on LTIR. They have cap space. They can afford a Bo Horvat, and you have use for him. You put him at second line center right after Sebastian Aho. It's an easy place to do it. And if they did get Horvat, my guess is they would improve, right? Like that seems like a pretty easy guess there, right? That would probably happen. But I also look at, do you think the Bruins need to go into a mode of like, hey, we need to get Bo Horvat so they don't? I don't think that's a good strategy to have, but it is annoying, I guess, when you go to play them in the playoffs, if you do, and suddenly you're trying to figure out matchups and you have to plan for someone like a Bo Horvat online too.
Yeah, I think it's you kind of run the risk of falling down that rabbit hole if you go into a bidding war with a team that probably has more assets and also probably a greater need right now for Bo Horvat, right? Like we talk about
Yes.
Horvat and where he fits in the grand scheme of things next year. Makes plenty of sense, especially if Bergeron and Krejci, or at least one of them, aren't back. Makes a lot of sense. This year, will he help? Of course. But is there a glaring hole for a 40-goal center? Not really. Like, again, you can put him on the wing and you have a fantastic top line or second line, what have you. He will help. But look at where the vacancies are for Carolina, and especially with a guy like Pacioretty going down, that's a legitimate hole that a team like Carolina that also feels like it's on the brink of a deep run, they need him right now. And you also look at the fact that, yes, the Bruins have guys like Lohrei and Lysell and what have you in a first-round pick. Look at Carolina where, they mention young, NHL players. Are they looking at a guy like Jarvis? Are they looking at a guy like Marty Necas? Like all these guys, it's one of those things where they have more tangible assets that they can move as opposed to like a prospect or two from the Bruins. So, yes, I think ideally you'd like Bo Horvat to go to like some team out west or a team that's like a 7 or 8 seed who will help them, but it's not, a kind of an arms race between the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. But you can't, I think, be looking at the other team while relinquishing assets that, again, help you out, but is there a need for it, or do you have the assets really to contend if a team like Carolina is dropping a guy like Natchez or what have you? So it's tough, right? Like you'll see this happen. We've seen it happen time and time again with like Tampa Bay, right? Where it's like, oh, I wonder what they'll do. Oh God, they got Brendan Hagel. Oh, they got Nick Paul. Oh, they got Barclay Goodrow, all these guys, Blake Coleman. Like it's never good when you see these guys go to a team that you view as probably your top rival, Ryan McDonough, right?
Yes.
And there's times where I think you look at the McDonough thing and the case could be made that the Bruins should have made a move there, but because there was I think a glaring need for McDonough on that decor at the time. But
was that 2018?
2018, I want to say, right?
That was the year they got Rick Nash, right?
Yes. So, and you look at just how much that would have filled a hole. Like, again, Horvat will help this team. I'm not saying he won't, and he will especially help next year. But I think when you look at just the urgency for this season, especially, Carolina probably has more of a pressing need right now because they have a spot open with Petraglia out. Like, it makes a lot more sense for them than the Bruins, and especially if the Bruins have to give up 2 firsts or Lysell and Lohrei or Harrison or Matthew Poitras, any of these other guys as well. You kind of run down that slippery slope if you're always looking, across the table at what the other team's hand is, right? So we'll see how it all, works out. But I think if you're the Bruins, the one thing you can't do at this deadline is, focus most of your efforts on what the other teams in the East are doing.
If you focus on others, you'll never be happy.
Exactly.
Well said. But I will say, like, the more I think about this, and we'll talk about this more as the deadline quickly approaches, especially after the All-Star break, when it's going to be, like 9 days. And it's going to be like, all right, like deadline time. An interesting thing about Fabian Lysell, I don't really want to trade him. I think he is an asset that is, projects as a top 6 winger in the NHL. But what's one thing the Bruins have a lot of currently? Top 6 wingers in the NHL: Taylor Hall, Brad Marchand, Jake DeBrusk. For hopefully David Pastrnak. I would assume they get, I would think they get that done, at some point. So let's say, you have those 4, and you have those guys locked up for a fair amount of time. do you have a place to put Lysell? I mean, it's a legitimate case. And if you're going for a Stanley Cup now, like if this is the year and you really want to maximize this, maybe that is what you do. Now, again, it comes down to where do you put Bo Horvat in the lineup? Like DeBrusk, if these 3 games have proven anything, it's that DeBrusk works with Marchand and Bergeron. That is a good line. So do you want to break that up, right? Do you want to move Pavel Zacha off that line? Well, where does he go now? Do you take Trent Frederic off the third line? Like, there are things you have to do in your own lineup, but if it's because you're held up on trading Lysell, like, I don't want to trade Lysell. I think Lysell is really good, and I think he has potential and all these things, right? But at the same time, you do have those top 6 wingers in the NHL. And I think a lot of people look at like Lowry and like they say like, oh, the left side on D, it's Hampus Lindholm and Grzelcyk. Like you do have a need for Lowry in the future, and Lowry, I mean, has the frame for it, like all that stuff, right? But you have those top 6 wingers in the NHL. So again, I'm not advocating for trading Lysell, but I don't think we should be like, oh no, don't even think about that. Like, and I think that's one thing that I think people get hung up on prospects, myself included. But I think that when you look at the roster itself, there's quite a few of those top 6 wingers. And it's better to have those prospects than not. But if you're going to sacrifice, if Lysell was a center, it would be different, right? Like if Lysell had that upside and was a center, you would say, well, no, like they need him probably next year in that role. They might not even need him in that top 6 role next year. So I don't know. I just think that it's slippery slope to hold off on trading someone like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it has to be something where you look at it, and that's not to say you have to move Lysell. That means you get a guy like Luke Shen or something like that, yeah. right? Like no, it's all about finding the right price. But if it's part of a move, even if it's like, let's say it's next year and you kick the can down the road for looking for a center, and I don't know, it's Lysell in a first and someone else like a Clayton Keller or someone like that, right? You're looking at just any other potentially young centers that could move in a year or two. That's when you look at it, yeah, and maybe Lysell next year is averaging, 2 points or 2 points per game or something really early on in the year in Providence. He's still a very skilled player, but if it fits a need more, then you have to make that call. So yes, Lysell is very talented. I think for Bruins fans who have been desperate for blue chip prospects in their system, you covet these guys even more when it looks like they do show that flash and that promise. But that being said, if it move like that improves the team both this year or especially in the years ahead and gives you a proven NHL product in return, you have to make that call, right? So I don't think any of these guys should be off limits. It's all about just being smart with your assets, right? Because if, again, you're looking at a team like Carolina, you overspend to get a guy like Horvat and it leads to a cap crunch next year or what have you, then again, maybe you've helped out your team in the short term, but you're also don't want to see guys like Lysell also be lighting up and Horvat's either not re-signing or who knows what happens. So you just got to be cognizant of those things. But yes, I agree. I don't think any of these guys should be absolutely off limits.
Horvat feels a little like an overperformer this year. That's someone I'm a teeny bit wary of giving like a huge long-term deal to. But at the same time, guy like Hampus Lindholm, we kind of said last year, always regressing. You never know. So who knows? Maybe a change of scenery helps him continue that, the culture change, all those things. I don't know. Who knows what happens? Doesn't feel like the Bruins are going to do a huge move like that where they trade Lysell, but again, I just don't think they should be completely opposed to doing so. Conor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way throughout this Bruins season. We'll have a few more breakdowns as Bruins 3-game lull over at Boston.com. But beyond Bruins news, we also have Celtics, Patriots, Red Sox. Everything that is happening in Boston sports you can find over at Boston.com. From yours truly and many other very talented writers. And if you want to follow me on Twitter as well, you can at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week. The Bruins Beat podcast is powered by America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh.